In the world of military aviation, bigger doesn't always mean better. While massive bombers and supersonic jets are crucial for modern warfare, there exist smaller, more agile war machines that can operate in places where traditional aircraft cannot. These compact powerhouses have redefined combat strategies and given nations new tactical advantages. From cutting-edge microjets to highly advanced stealth drones, today we're taking an in-depth look at the world's smallest yet most powerful military aircraft. Machines that every nation is eager to possess. But what exactly makes these aircraft so valuable on the battlefield? How have they changed the way wars are fought? And what tactical advantages do they offer over their larger counterparts? Most importantly, what are some of the most famous missions where these compact powerhouses played a decisive role? Join us as we uncover the secrets behind these remarkable war machines and explore their impact on modern warfare. Let's get started. Number 1. BD-5J, the smallest jet that became a Hollywood star. BD-5J, the world's smallest jet-powered aircraft. Designed by Jim Bead in the 1970s, this microjet weighs only 358 kilograms and has a wingspan of just 4.3 meters. Despite its tiny frame, it can reach speeds of 515 kilometers per hour, 320 miles per hour. This jet is so famous that it even made it into Hollywood. If you've ever watched the James Bond movie Octopussy, you've seen the BD-5J in action. It performed incredible stunts, flying through narrow openings and dodging enemy fire. But beyond the movies, the BD-5J caught the interest of the US military. Its incredible speed and agility made it a great candidate for use in training pilots for high-speed dogfights. The US Air Force and NATO forces tested it as a possible enemy aircraft simulator, preparing pilots for combat against smaller, faster threats. Additionally, there were secret projects considering the BD-5J for covert reconnaissance missions. Its small size made it extremely difficult for radar to detect, potentially making it an ideal spy plane. 2. Harrier Jump Jet, the Falklands war hero. Next, we have the Harrier Jump Jet, one of the most versatile and groundbreaking aircraft ever built. Unlike traditional fighter jets that require long runways, the Harrier can take off and land vertically, just like a helicopter. This unique capability allows it to operate from small aircraft carriers, remote outposts, and even makeshift landing zones, making it a true game-changer in modern warfare. What makes the Harrier truly special is its VTOL, vertical takeoff and landing technology. Instead of relying on traditional jet engines, the Harrier uses a vectored thrust system, which allows the pilot to direct the jet's exhaust nozzles downward for takeoff and then transition them backward for high-speed flight. This gave it unmatched flexibility on the battlefield, making it an invaluable asset for naval and ground operations. But the real test for the Harrier came in 1982, during the Falklands War. When Argentina invaded the Falkland Islands, the British military found itself in a difficult position. The nearest friendly airbase was thousands of miles away, and there were no runways on the islands for conventional fighter jets. The only hope for air superiority rested on a small fleet of Harrier Jump Jets, deployed from aircraft carriers HMS Invincible and HMS Hermes. Outnumbered and facing high-performance Argentine Mirage 3 fighters, the Harriers had to rely on tactics and technology rather than brute force. Unlike the Mirages, which needed long airstrips to land and refuel, the Harriers could operate directly from British aircraft carriers, allowing them to launch surprise attacks and quickly return for rearming. One of the most decisive aerial battles occurred on May 1st, 1982, when a squadron of Harriers engaged Argentine Mirages in combat. While the Mirages relied on speed and altitude, the Harriers used their superior maneuverability and advanced AIM-9 Sidewinder missiles to outgun and outmaneuver their opponents. Within minutes, the Harriers scored multiple kills, securing the skies over the Falklands. Despite being outnumbered by Argentine Mirage fighter jets, the Harriers dominated the air. Over the course of the war, British Harriers shot down over 20 enemy aircraft while suffering minimal losses, a remarkable achievement given the circumstances. Their ability to strike quickly, evade enemy fire, and return to their carriers made them the most feared aircraft in the conflict. But the Harriers weren't just used for air-to-air combat. They also played a crucial role in ground attacks, providing close air support for British troops landing on the islands. Armed with cluster bombs, bombers, rockets, and cannon fire, Harriers destroyed Argentine positions, supply lines, and anti-air defenses, allowing British forces to advance. As the war continued, Argentine pilots quickly realized that engaging a Harrier in a dogfight was a losing battle. Many began avoiding direct confrontation, forcing the Argentine Air Force to switch tactics. Instead of aerial engagements, they focused on launching ground-based air defenses and exocet missile attacks against British ships. 3. XF-85 Goblin, the tiny jet that never made it. Now, let's talk about one of the strangest and most ambitious military aircraft ever built, the XF-85 Goblin. This miniature jet fighter was unlike anything seen before. Instead of launching from a runway or an aircraft carrier, the Goblin was designed to be carried inside the belly of a massive B-36 Peacemaker bomber and deployed mid-air to defend it against enemy fighters. The idea was simple. Heavy bombers were vulnerable to enemy fighter attacks, and escorting them with conventional fighters wasn't always practical, especially over long distances. So why not have a fighter jet that could be launched directly from the bomber itself? The Goblin was meant to be a parasite fighter, a tiny guardian that could intercept enemy aircraft and then return to the bomber for retrieval. On paper, the concept seemed revolutionary. The Goblin was incredibly compact, only 4.5 meters long, and had no landing gear because it wasn't supposed to land at all. Instead, it relied on a retractable hook to latch back onto the bomber mid-flight. If the mission was successful, the Goblin would dock inside the bomber and be ready for another deployment. However, in reality, things didn't go as planned. Pilots quickly discovered that the Goblin was incredibly unstable in the air. With its short wingspan and small control surfaces, it was extremely difficult to maneuver, especially in turbulent conditions. But the biggest challenge was yet to come: returning to the bomber. Trying to dock back onto the B-36 was a nightmare. The turbulence from the bomber's engines created powerful air currents that made precise control almost impossible. The retrieval hook was difficult to align, and pilots had to make multiple attempts just to get close. The slightest miscalculation could send the Goblin into a dangerous spin. In one of the test flights, pilot Ed Schock was flying the Goblin when he attempted to reconnect with the bomber. As he approached, a sudden gust of turbulence smashed the Goblin into the bomber's docking trapeze, shattering the fighter's canopy and nearly knocking him unconscious. With no way to reattach, Schock had to make an emergency landing, but there was a problem. The Goblin had no landing gear. With no wheels and no way to safely land, Schock was forced to belly land the Goblin on a dry lake bed. The aircraft skidded across the desert floor, miraculously keeping Schock alive. This test proved what engineers feared. The Goblin simply wasn't practical for real combat scenarios. Despite several attempts to refine the design, the problems remained: too unstable, too difficult to control, too risky to recover. The U.S. Air Force finally abandoned the project in 1949, realizing that aerial refueling and long-range escort fighters were far better solutions for bomber defense. 4. Yakovlev Yak-15, the Soviet Union's first jet fighter. While the United States was experimenting with microjets and early jet fighters, the Soviet Union was developing its own answer to the rapid shift in aerial warfare. Enter the Yakovlev Yak-15, the very first operational jet fighter of the USSR. Built in 1946, this aircraft was a crucial stepping stone for Soviet aviation, helping the Red Army transition from propeller-driven fighters to modern jet-powered warplanes. However, if the Yak-15 looks familiar, that's because it wasn't a completely new design. Instead of developing a jet fighter from scratch, Soviet engineers took the proven Yak-3 airframe, removed the piston engine, and fitted a jet engine into it. This decision was made to speed up production, allowing experienced Yak-3 pilots to quickly adapt to jet flight without needing extensive retraining. The engine of choice was the RD-10 turbojet, which was actually a reverse-engineered version of the German Junkers Jumo 004, the same engine used in Nazi Germany's Messerschmitt Me 262. After World War II, Soviet engineers took captured German technology and reproduced their own jet propulsion system, allowing the USSR to rapidly develop its first generation of jet fighters. On paper, the Yak-15 had promising specifications. It could reach speeds of 786 kilometers per hour, 488 miles per hour, making it significantly faster than any piston engine fighter in the Soviet arsenal. It was also highly maneuverable thanks to its lightweight frame. But while it was an impressive step forward, the Yak-15 had some serious flaws that would ultimately seal its fate. First, the aircraft lacked sufficient fuel capacity. With an endurance of just 25 minutes of flight time, Yak-15 pilots had little room for error. The aircraft was essentially a jet-powered training tool, not a true combat-ready fighter. This meant that despite its high speeds, its operational range was too limited for real-world missions. Another major problem was its undercarriage design. Since it was based on the Yak-3, the Yak-15 retained tail-dragger landing gear, a design more suited for piston engine planes. This caused serious stability issues during takeoff and landing, as pilots had to fight against nose-up tendencies, making it much harder to control at low speeds. Then came the biggest issue of all, the speed at which jet fighter technology was evolving. While the Yak-15 was an excellent training platform, it was already obsolete before it even entered full-scale production. Just a year after its debut, Soviet engineers had developed the Yak-17 and MiG-9, both of which featured better aerodynamics, increased fuel capacity, and more powerful engines. The Soviet military knew that if they wanted to compete with American and British jet fighters, they needed more advanced technology, not just a modified World War II design. By 1947, production of the Yak-15 was officially halted, with only 280 units ever built. The aircraft was quickly phased out in favor of superior jet fighters. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more military aviation content. See you in the next mission.